All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome back, y'all. I hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving break. I know the weather was very pleasant, and I hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of rest and relaxation. Hopefully you, practiced your social distancing and wore your masks. In my family, we had our first ever Zoom Thanksgiving. It was actually really fun. We all cooked different meals in our houses, and then we all joined a big Zoom and more or less ate dinner as if we were right across the table from one another. And it's definitely something that I think my family is going to continue to do in the future, because normally my entire extended family can't get together, right? Maybe some of us are in Florida, some of us in North Carolina. And this was the first year that we more or less had every single person on my extended family, from all of my dad's sisters and their kids to my mom's side of the family. So it was pretty neat. It was a really interesting experience. And so despite all the challenges, I think that, COVID's thrown our way, I think there's a lot of good that will come from all of this. So it's crunch time. We got 2 more weeks, right? I think I will see you guys, 4 more times, right? So there's not a lot of time left. And since we're kind of entered, that cram season, right, it's going to start to feel a little bit like you're maybe a first-year university student, right? Your whole normal routine is kind of off. And you're going to kind of have to go back and reflect and look at some things that we haven't really talked or thought about in a long time, okay? Now, I've come up with a study plan for y'all, right? That way you can just do a little bit each day, and that way you don't find yourself cramming the weekend before the EOCs, okay? The EOCs will be held in the morning, all right? And that'll be 3 weeks from now. Not this week, not the following week, but that 3rd week of December. And since you guys are first period, you guys will be first up. First up the bat, you guys will take your EOC on that Monday. It'll be held in the morning. I think 8 o'clock is the expected start time. And it should all be over by about 11:30. Okay. Now, I'm talking about the testing session being over at 11:30, right? That exam is not going to take y'all 3 hours. I promise. Most of you guys, there's a good chance most of you guys will be done within the first 45, 60-minute block, right? It's not a big exam, right? 60 questions, multiple choice, right? Think about how quickly you were able to complete the benchmark, right? And the benchmark is of similar length and size, right? So it's not going to be a long exam. It's going to be one of those exams, though, that's so short and sweet that you want to make sure that you're prepared, because you go and you miss 5 or 6 questions on a 60-question exam, and that can rob you of some points really quickly, okay? We're going to spend the next 2 weeks kind of talking about some new information, all right, but also while incorporating some information from earlier in the semester. So we're going to kind of split our class time together. Half will be new information, half will be studying, because I don't know about you guys, I always work better at work. I always school better at school. I always studied better in like a library or in a group setting. Okay, so I'm going to try to provide a lot of time for us to do that together, so that you're not sitting in your room distracted by all the things that you might have hanging on your wall, or all the laptops and games and things like that. So as always, I want to go ahead and take a look at the checklist for the week. And again, there are still some new assignments. I have done away with some of the assignments, so there's no notes for this particular unit, because we're actually going to be using your EOC study guide as your notes for this particular unit. So let's go over here to first period biology, go to classwork, and I'll talk about these 2 things that I posted up here in just a second. Week 16. Oh, how'd the volleyball game go on Tuesday? Nice, good. So what's the season looking like? What do you guys have left?
If we don't just lie down and really bad routine, it should be not. And if we beat 4, then we can talk.
And how is it going to work for playoffs this year? I know cross country is a lot different. Per conference or per region? Oh, nice. Okay, well that sounds good. When's your next game? Tomorrow. Okay, so and that's against. Okay, when do you guys play Fred T. Ford again?
Not this week. I think next.
Okay, gotcha. Well, just keep me updated. I'd like to try to watch that online. All right, so, and just a quick update with cross country. The patent ladies won their second cross-country meet. So that's 2 meets in a row. And Madison Clay, she broke the school record by almost 45 seconds the first week of cross-country. And then this last week, she broke our course record for the ladies as well. And the guys were second place. And so we're doing pretty well this season, despite all the challenges. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of review today, okay, and kind of get you guys started on your EOC study packets during our Zoom. And then I assigned this last week, and actually a good number of you guys already took care of this, right? So if you didn't get around to it, that's okay. That's why I left it open until 11:59 p.m. tonight. It's a video that kind of connects, genetic diseases and how they can be influenced by the environment, and how sometimes these particular genes, these particular mutations, in some circumstances, aren't necessarily deleterious or maladaptive. In other words, they can actually help individuals survive, right? And so this video right here is taking us from genetics into our discussion of natural selection and the biodiversity that we see on planet Earth. I have also posted your vocab for this particular unit, and that's going to be due tomorrow by midnight. I think there's only 25 words, and some of these words you'll recognize. And I know sometimes students will say, hey, I notice sometimes in these vocabs, a word comes up again. Well, if you see a word multiple times from one unit to the next and to the next and to the next, hopefully you're putting 2 and 2 together and thinking to yourself, I can't tell you how many times I've seen this particular word. This word is important. I need to make sure to understand this word and how it applies to each of the units that it's mentioned in. Mutation is the word I'm talking about. We're going to talk a lot about mutation while we discuss natural selection. And then again, while we're doing the review, I'm going to kind of talk about the EOC study guide and how I would get it done. Now, again, I'm just going to give you some recommendations, right? Because ultimately you guys need to exercise some personal responsibility. Tuesday, your vocab's due, and I'd like for you tomorrow to start working on your video about resistance, okay? It's not talking about any kind of political resistance. We're talking about antibiotic and pesticide resistance. For those of you guys that took AP Environmental, you should be very familiar, or if you at least watch the news or know anything about medicine, you'll be familiar with this idea. And then we'll work on our study guides. On Wednesday, it'll be asynchronous. Your video, your second video will be due at midnight. And then you can start working on your article and classification. It's a really short article. It's not a Science Daily article, right? It's just kind of really a simple explanation of something known as taxonomy, and not to be confused with taxidermy, which is like the stuffing of animals and fish. Taxonomy is how we classify the organisms. And then on Thursday, your article we do, and we'll have a relatively big study session because my goal for this Friday is for you guys to have already completed 50% of your study guide, okay? Because for this study guide to really be meaningful and impactful for you, it needs to be done, before we take our exam, right? And I'll show you my plan because I would like to have this done by about the middle of next week, so that when we take our practice EOC, you will get a really, really, really clear indication. Okay, this is what I know. This is what I don't know. I will be sending you guys information about y'all's benchmarks, right? To kind of break down the questions that you missed, the questions we missed collectively as a class, and that can help you study as well. On Friday, we will have a Unit 8 quiz on biodiversity, which that'll include things like natural selection and classification. Now, let me show you guys some things that are a little bit different for Unit 8. Again, there are notes for Unit 8, and there's not a single PowerPoint. I've got 2 PowerPoints because I've kind of collapsed or consolidated 2 mini units into one small unit. So you've got your little PowerPoint about evolution right here, and then the PowerPoint about classification. Now, since I'm not giving you guys the little note-taking outline, okay, all that I'm asking is that over the course of the week, for you to look through those slides. The slides contain your vocabulary words, right? So you could even use these PowerPoints as a way to complete your vocab. I know that a lot of you guys love to pray to Lord Google, right? But copying and pasting is not really going to help you. But however, if you look at these PowerPoints and you simply pull both documents up, I even put the vocabulary words in order, right? So if you pull up this first PowerPoint, right, and you've got it in one window and your vocab in another window, and you just go slide by slide and type into vocabulary, okay? And not all of the slides have vocabulary on them. Some of them are diagrams, right? That'll be really important for you to consider. And I'll actually be going over these PowerPoints in class. In fact, I am going to start today just introducing the idea of evolution and natural selection. Now, another thing I want to show you guys up here at the very, very top, you know, you've already seen this, the EOC study guide. And again, some of you guys picked up paper copies. I still have plenty of paper copies if you decide, yeah, I think that's something I'd rather have. I still have plenty of those. And then I put together a study plan, because I know this can seem really daunting. You know, you look at this and you think, holy crap, that's a lot, okay? So what I did is I broke it down, and I kind of came up with a plan, okay? So this is week 16, right? And what I've done is per day, I have put page numbers. Hold on one second. Good morning.
Talk to you.
Not yet.
Probably gonna run Thursday instead of tomorrow.
Yes, I did. I saw the email just this morning.
Oh, we got an email?
Yeah, Sanderlin sent it to me, the coach from High Brighton. He sent it to me like right at 7:50 or something like that. So
Yeah.
it was new news. Well, that's better. Gives time to
Fine with me.
shake off the turkey and gravy.
I was telling Jeff that I had to go to that thing today instead of to practice.
Yeah.
He says, yeah, did you get a text or a message? And I said, no. He said that the
AD probably reached out to
said
him.
something about it.
Yeah, probably because of weather. Well, sounds good. Well, appreciate the heads up.
Yeah, man.
All right, so these numbers right here correlate to the page numbers. And this is why if you have a printed copy, these page numbers will be a whole lot easier to understand, okay? So there are a total of 16 pages, right? And that's like, you know, page 1 and the backside of page 2. And so what I've done here is I've selected page numbers that represent current new information. Like, for example, some of the things we're going to talk about today correlate with what's on page 12, right? And then I put a page number from way back when, right? That way you're kind of learning something new and something old simultaneously. Does that make sense? Right? Because if you go all the way back to 1 and 2 and you're doing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, the new information we're talking about right now might get kind of lost, right? Does that make sense? Right? And if you're just focusing on the last couple pages, right, the new information, what you're going to end up doing is you might wait too long. And then you know, if you work backwards and you go from page 16 all the way to page 1, you might get to page 1 and realize, oh, shoot, Mr. Collins, I don't remember any of this. And at that point, we've only got a day or two together left, and we're scrambling to try to get you caught up, okay? Now, again, this is a recommendation. I know some of you guys, you just have to start from the beginning, right? And you have to go in sequential order, and that's fine. This was just how I would do it, okay? And so what I did is I put pairs of pages. And guys, doing 2 pages, like front and back, I mean, obviously, this is going to be a little easier for me to do, but I guarantee most of you in here could do this in probably less than 10 minutes, right? A lot of this you could probably do from memory. Again, it's a study guide, right? So, you know, where it says carbohydrates, you know, subunit made of, you know, it's monosaccharide. You're not writing a paragraph in those boxes. Now, for week 17, which would be next week, you can see that my goal for week 17 is to have that EOC study guide completed. Because what I want to do on Thursday, whether you're here as Plan A or A students or B students at home or Virtual Academy, we're going to take a practice EOC, okay? You're going to come in on that day. I'll have the EOC already opened, and you'll take it. And as soon as you're done, you'll get your scores, right? And you'll have a paper copy of the EOC in your hands with the answer key to take home with you, right? For those of you guys that are B-Day students, obviously you'll get your paper copy and answer key on Friday, okay? Virtual Academy students, I'll just simply send you a PDF of the EOC and a PDF of the practice EOC. So let's say you take the practice EOC on Thursday and you make an 80, okay? Focus on the questions you missed. You'll have the answer key, right? And I'll have you write your answers on a piece of paper, not on the exam. That way on Sunday, you might think, okay, I've studied it again. Let me take that practice EOC again and let me see how I do. It's a released EOC. right? So it's exactly how the questions will appear when you take the exam for the final, okay? And I haven't completely decided what I want to do with the EOC study guide and the practice EOC. I think what I might do for the EOC study guide is, if it's completed in its entirety, I think I will, I don't know, I'm thinking about giving you guys a test grade for that. You think that's fair? Because, I mean, that's a lot of work. You know, that's 16 pages, right? And so I think I want it to be worth your investment. And what I'll do with the practice COC, okay, whatever you make on the practice COC, right? As long as it's higher than one of your lower exam grades, I'll replace your lowest exam grade with your practice COC. Now, if you make a 25 in the practice COC and you've made nothing but 90s, we'll just pretend like you didn't take it. That makes sense? The practice COC can only help you. It can't hurt you, right? And I guarantee y'all, if some of you guys get this study guide done and you do prepare for your exams, some of you guys in here have a good shot at making close to 100, if not a 100 on that exam. And I'm not even talking about the practice EOC. I'm talking about the actual EOC. I know what some of y'all are capable of, and I know this has not been your traditional classroom setting, but I really think if you invested in the next 2 weeks, you know, you'd be happy with the results. And for some of you guys who have been floating around in the B, like the B range, you know, and you've been working hard all semester, I'm the kind of person that, you know, if you've had an 85 all semester and, you know, you rock out and you make a 92 or a 93 on your EOC and it bumps you up to like an 88, it's not quite a 90, it's not quite an A. You just demonstrated to me that you knew 92% of the curriculum, of a cumulative curriculum, right? You may have made some mistakes earlier on. That's why you ended up with an 85, maybe some missing assignments, maybe you got sick, whatever. If you make an A on the EOC and you've got a B in my class, then you will get an A in my class. Does that make, you follow me there, right? So it can be something to help you big time. If you have a C and you make a B, you have a C and you make an A, it's got to be a really good A. If you had a C and you made a 100, then obviously it's kind of hard for me to, you know, but know at the end of the day that I've got that ability to kind of push you forward, right? I'm not going to push you back down, right? If you've got a 92 or 93 and you've had it all semester long and you just bomb the EOC, I'm not going to let that like sink your ship, okay? Because again, I have no control over those questions, okay? So let's go ahead and go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint for natural selection. And I'm just going to talk to you guys about this for just a little bit. And again, I am recording this, so I will post this later on the YouTube channel for Unit 8, so you can go back and look through it. And I'm going to kind of hit you with the highlights here, okay? You can see that I haven't had a chance to necessarily update this one in a while, but that's all right. A lot of this hasn't changed. Okay. So, you know, when we think about the E word evolution, a lot of people, it stirs some mixed emotions and mixed feelings, okay? When we discuss natural selection and evolution, I need you to understand that for the most part, when scientists study natural selection, when scientists study evolution, we're looking to the future, not to the past. Are there some scientists sitting on top of a hill somewhere with long gray beards, scratching their beards, wondering the origin of life? Yeah, right? There are entire departments at some universities, Harvard actually has one, which their primary focus is on trying to figure out where the origin of life came from. But by and large, a majority of scientists are not necessarily concerned what the first cell was. Their concern is, how has cells or how have cells and organisms changed over time? Because if we can notice some patterns, we can make some predictions, right? If we can establish a process, this is how bacteria have changed, then we can make some assumptions about how they might change in the future, right? And that can be really helpful to us, right? Now, one thing you need to realize is when we talk about biological evolution or biological change over time, we're not talking about your music preference, right? Some people like to use the term like, oh, I've really evolved as a person. And some of you, because I had you last year as freshmen and having you again now, I've seen a lot of personal evolution, right? Huge changes in your personalities, your work ethics, and the quality of your work. But when we talk about biology in the sense of evolution, we're not talking about your personality changing. We're talking about the fact that the average height of human beings over the last couple hundred years has increased. So would you not agree that humans, the average height of a human being has changed over time? Yeah, we can look at the fossil evidence. We can look at bones, right? We can dig people up and be like, oh, wow, what was considered tall then is not tall anymore, right? Like, take me back to the 1500s, I would have been a giant, right? Walking around Patton High School, you might be like, yeah, he's above average. But then I go stand next to some of the basketball team, and I always go from tall to really small, right? So species change over time. Again, we're focusing on the how and not necessarily the why, all right? Now, I know when we talk about natural selection and evolution, we cannot forget about extinction. And I think one word that popped up on the EOC a couple years ago that really threw people for a loop, dinosaurs, right? Like, your Triceratops and your Tyrannosaurus Rex, they are extinct, right? Which means that they're biologically extinct. You can't find them on planet Earth anymore. That is not to be confused with the word extant, which means like still here, okay? So just know that extinct, they're out of there, and extant means they're still here. I know some of that word kind of throws people off. It showed up one year and people were like, what? What is this, right? And so just know that there's extinct and extant. Now, when we talk about, why organisms go extinct and why new organisms form, all right, it has a lot to do with survivorship, okay? And so this is a joke right here. It's like, why did the dinosaurs go extinct? And right, you got them here smoking cigarettes, okay? Because what do we know about cigarettes? They contain chemicals that cause mutations. What do we call those chemicals that cause mutations? Mutagens. And will mutagens increase or decrease your survivorship or your likelihood of surviving? Decrease. And so by decreasing your ability to survive, it's also going to decrease your ability to reproduce. Okay, and you could potentially pass on some of those mutations to your offspring as well. You don't really need to know much about Charles Darwin other than he was kind of, I don't want to say like a college dropout. There were some expectations for his family and what he was supposed to study. Right? And then he decided like last minute, he's like, no, I'm going to jump on this ship and just like hang out in the woods and explore the world. Okay. So, sometimes we make some rather extreme decisions sometimes, but they pay off, right? So Charles Darwin is considered, kind of the father of the theory of evolution, but he wasn't the first person to be like, hey guys, nature changes over time. People have been talking about that for a long time. Most scientists and naturalists in Darwin's time were like, yes, nature changes over time. Charles Darwin was the first one to explain how this was happening, right? The kind of mechanisms that was driving these changes. And you've probably seen these diagrams and images before, like the monkey becoming man. And I've always had students ask me, well, Mr. Collins, if humans came from chimpanzees, why don't we see this? Why don't we see like the middle? Well, because humans didn't come from monkeys. Humans didn't come from chimpanzees, right? Charles Darwin's application of descent with modification simply states that humans and chimpanzees would have shared a common ancestor. In fact, if you actually look at fossil evidence of chimpanzees, they're actually a younger species, right? So our ancestral lineage, right, belonging to the genus Homo, or Homo sapiens, has actually been on planet Earth longer, right? You can almost think of a chimpanzee as a more modern species. And you might be thinking, well, they can't compose music and write poems and all that. No, but where they are, would you not agree that they're pretty well adapted for their environment? Yeah, right? So they're the superstars of their environment, and we're kind of the superstars of ours. Now, one thing you need to realize is individuals cannot evolve. Guys, evolution is something that takes place in a population, right? In a species, right? So when we talk about evolution, or you want to study the evolutionary history, right, of Canis lupus, right? You're wondering, where did my dog come from? You're not going to look at just your dog. You're going to look at all dogs. And you're going to realize that they all have diverged from a common ancestor. And what is the shared common ancestor of most domesticated dogs? A wolf. In fact, the name Canis lupus. Any of you guys Harry Potter fans? Yeah, right. So that lupine or lupus that usually refers to a wolf, right? Kind of like werewolves, right? So Canis lupus is like your common wolf. In fact, dogs, their full scientific name is Canis lupus familiaris, because dogs are not necessarily their whole separate species yet. Because can I take a German Shepherd and wolf and breed them together still? Yes, but they're on their way to being new species. You might be thinking, what? If I put a male Chihuahua and a female Timberwolf in a cage together, even if the lady Timberwolf really happened to like the little male Chihuahua, is there any chance they're going to reproduce? The pieces just don't fit, right? They're not anatomically compatible anymore. So although from a biochemical, like, yeah, we could put their sperm and egg together in like a test tube and artificially inseminate the wolf, that male Chihuahua is physically incapable, right? And so you give it another couple hundred years or another couple hundred generations, right? And the DNA in the Chihuahua and the DNA of the wolves will continue to diverge, accumulating mutations. We all know that there's no such thing as like a wild Chihuahua, right? Yeah, you don't just like walk around in Central America and be like, oh, look, a pack of wild Chihuahuas, right? They are the product of man, believe it or not. Now, how does natural selection work? You guys have heard survival of the fittest, right? So by that use of term, survival of the fittest, what am I implying if I use a term like fittest? Are all organisms of equal fitness? No, right? If I had a ship, right? And the world was going to flood tomorrow and everyone's going to drown. And I had a ship, but I could only take 5 of you guys on the ship. What if I measured the fitness by your ability to spike a volleyball? It's like, all right, guys, we're going to, play 2-on-2 volleyball, and the winning team gets to live, the losing team gets to die. There's going to be a difference in volleyball ability in here, right? I'm automatically in my head thinking, oh man, I'm in trouble, right? What if I said, okay, you got to race a 5K? What if I said you have to take a paper pencil exam? Or what if I said, here's a really, really interesting puzzle. The first 5 people to solve it, they get to survive. Is fitness always the same thing? No, and there's always variation in fitness. Wouldn't you all agree, if you look around this room, there's a great degree of variety in the individuals in here. Would you not agree that everyone in here probably has some strengths and probably has some weaknesses? Okay? That variation is what deems some of us more fit than others in certain circumstances. Right? I consider myself a fairly intelligent person. I consider myself someone who learns things quickly, and I consider myself someone with a reasonable amount of social intelligence. I like most people, and very rarely do I ever find someone that's like, I hate you, and I'm going to scream and yell at you, right? But let's rewind the clock. Let's say it's the year 1000 BC. We're all hanging out in the African savannah, right? And I can tell you all day about the nitrogen fixation in the soil and the antioxidants in the berries and the role of the elephants in preserving the forest versus the savannah. But a lion creeps up on us and y'all take off running. And I run the other way, run right into the wolf, or run into the lion, right? Because I'm blind as a bat, right? If the world ended tomorrow, a zombie apocalypse, and I go running out the door, trip and fall, and someone steps on my glasses, all of the things that I can do are now virtually obsolete, right? Because without my glasses, can I even read your facial expression very well? No, so then I lose my social intelligence, right? I know that I could beat I could beat everyone in here in a foot race, for sure. I could beat everyone in this classroom up the top of a tree, to climb up it. But if my glasses got knocked off, all of a sudden, all those things become what? Useless, right? So in certain circumstances, certain individuals are really fit and other individuals are not. You guys familiar with fight or flight response? There's one missing. So if a polar bear walked in that door, actually I don't know if polar bear will fit to that door, if you guys are familiar with how a polar bear standing on 10 legs would be much taller than this roof. Right, yeah, everyone's eyes got big. You're thinking, whoa, there's gonna be a variation in response And it's not even a thought out response. It's a reaction, right? We call those what? Things that you can do without thinking about them. They're kind of like ingrained in your DNA. Because of their instinct, right? How many of you guys, when you're scared, your first like tendency is to just take off running? Yeah, you're like laughing. You're like, yeah, that's me, man. My best friend James, every time we go to the beach or anytime we're in the woods, if a bird swoops him, he just takes off running. It's his response. I'm like, why are you running? He's like, I don't know. He's like, I think something swooped on me, or like a bird or something, or if he hears a spider or sees a spider, he takes off running. Right? That's his instinctual response. How many of you guys, your first response if someone like jumps around the corner to scare you is to like put your dukes up? Right? I'll never forget when we were kids, I scared my dad one time. I've only done it once, so I learned my lesson afterwards. Because my dad's fight or flight response to being scared was what? He pushed me into the drywall, right? Because it's an instinctual response. Yes. Yeah, some of y'all, I'd be, and I used to do this actually. I used to like hide in here on behavior day, and as people came in, I'd scare them, and we kind of monitor the responses, right? And then there's a third response that I don't know why we don't include it, but I guess it's kind of gross. The polar bear. Some of you guys are going to jump out that window and take off running. Some of you guys are going to pick up some kind of weapon, and some of you guys are going to do what? And just pass out and probably soil yourself. Now, you don't think, polar bear, time to poop, right? But that is your instinctual response to that. Because somewhere down the line, your ancestors were scared and they soiled themselves. They either peed their pants, you know? I mean, have you ever been so scared you pee your pants, right? A lot of people get in car accidents, right? The most embarrassing thing about it is after the car accident, they're like, oh man, I want to get out of the car because they've soiled themselves, right? Do you think that would increase the survivorship of an individual? Urinating and defecating all over yourself? Yeah, in fact, if a polar bear walked in this room right now, that would be your best chance of survival. Those of you that ran, none of you run faster than a bear, right? Even Usain Bolt couldn't run them. Are you going to fight that polar bear? That'd be really cute. Even if you had a revolver and shot it 6 times, it probably wouldn't be dead, and it'd probably live long enough to eat you while you were still alive. But for those of you that soiled yourself, your chance of survival would be the highest. In fact, when they look at people that have been attacked by bears and like the correlation between who survived and who didn't, a lot of times it's because the individual like played dead, right, or soiled themselves, right? Because that's an unusual behavior. And I mean, think about if you were an animal wanting to eat something, right, and it urinated or excreted feces all over itself right before you ate it, are you going to want to eat it? No, most animals have an aversion to like urine and wastes, right? And that will be a variation in your responses. Charles Darwin, this is a famous observation on the islands of the Galapagos. He noticed that in these groups of tortoises, there was a lot of variation in the structure of their shells and their just general anatomies. And you can imagine that these 3 variations had pros and cons, right? Hey, quick question. What kind of pattern of inheritance do you think is displayed by this? We've got domed, intermediate, and saddle. Is this simple dominance, incomplete dominance, codominance, multiple alleles, polygenic? You got little neck, big neck, and medium neck. So a gene for a small neck, a gene for a long neck, and when they're together, they get blended together. Yeah, the one with the flowers on the PowerPoint, the intermediate, right? The incomplete, right? So this is the gene for long neck, this is the gene for small neck, and this is the heterozygous, the hybrid, right? Now, what are the benefits of this guy? If you were this little tortoise, what benefits did you have? Yeah, man, you're like a walking, talking tank. What would be a con or a problem with being this guy? Yeah, hard to move, right? You're a tank, right? So you don't have to worry about the predators attacking you because what's your response going to be? Whoop, shrink up, right? What about this guy, the saddle neck? What are some problems for this guy? Yeah, his neck and his head are exposed. I'd imagine it'd be pretty tough for this guy to whoop, shrink up in his shell. What pro does he have? What benefit? What would be the benefit of looking like this? Although predators can grab you by the neck, Was that? You can move easier. Maybe this guy can move a little faster, maybe a little more agile, or since he can look around better, maybe he sees the predator before it's coming. Or just an easier time getting food, right? This guy can get food from higher up in the tree, whereas this guy's like, man, if it ain't grass, I can't get to it. And what about this guy? Kind of the best of both worlds, right? Can't necessarily reach the highest fruit and can't necessarily protect himself from all predators, but a nice happy medium, okay? Now, when you look at the environments that these tortoises live on, they're all three different. What kind of environment do you think you'd find this domed tortoise in? The most important thing for this tortoise is protection. Lots of predators, right? And lots of maybe predators from the air, right? And so these tortoises were found on the young islands that had lots and lots of grasses, but not a lot of trees. And so you had all these birds of prey, all the hawks, everything just flying around, constantly see you, nowhere to hide, right? So there's a lot of predator pressure. What about this guy? What do you think the island was like for this guy? Yeah, in a forest, right? Because if you're walking around a forest, do you have to worry as much about these massive hawk and albatross swooping down and gobbling you up? No, right? You got the shelter of the forest, right? And what about these guys? Yeah, right in the middle, right? In the transitional period, right? They can survive in both areas, maybe not as good, they can't compete as well, but they have a little bit more adaptability, right? And in fact, the Galapagos Islands, they're all different ages. And sure enough, after Charles Darwin made some observations, he could look through his little telescope and say, hey, this island looks like there's a mix of grass and trees. I bet you will find this. And sure enough, that was found. Now, was it nature? Was it the environment looking at the turtles and saying, guys, this is the best way to do it? No. Because if you breed these tortoises, these are all possibilities. But if you were born in the jungle island and you looked like this, would you be as likely to survive? No, your strength of protecting yourself from predators is not that important anymore, and you can only eat the grass. And is there a lot of grass in the tropical rainforest? The ground is just mud and leaves, right? All the good stuff is up higher up the ground. So they would have died and not passed on their genes in that tropical rainforest setting. Whereas these guys would have had no problem getting all the yums, plenty strong and plenty capable of reproducing. Now, this is a famous example of natural selection. I know it's probably hard to see, but can you see the two moths? All right, there's the peppered moth right there. And this was a rare phenotype, a rare recessive phenotype. It popped up every now and then, right? And this moth had a hard time surviving. Well, during the Industrial Revolution in the United Kingdom, they burned so much coal that the coal killed off a lot of the lichen. Lichen are good indicators of air quality. And the trunks were covered in soot. Now who had the benefit? That rare recessive phenotype. And then now the more dominant phenotype was going to be more likely to be preyed upon, okay? And so environments change, phenotypes change, and given a long enough period of time, that species may have changed completely. But they started cleaning up the coal and doing different things to the waste products and the lichens growing back again. Now, this is what I find entertaining. Some people are like, nah, natural selection, no way, it can't happen. Doesn't work. Yet every single puppy that you've ever had, every single kitten you've ever come in contact with is a product of humans observing natural selection and kind of hijacking it for our own needs, right? So historically, there was probably a group of human beings that had a pack of wolves that were following them, eating all the discarded bones, eating their waste products. On occasions, some of the aggressive wolves would attack the group of people. And what would the people do? Kill the aggressive wolf. The wolf, because of some mutation and a difference in their brain, was maybe more docile. And could get closer and closer and closer to the people. And since it wasn't attacking the people did what? Nothing. Because if something came to attack the humans at night, what do wolves and dogs do if they're surprised or scared at night? They bark and howl. So the humans were like, this wolf is not mean. It's not attacking me, but it helps me. So what do the humans do to probably draw them in even closer? Start feeding them. You ever heard the saying, don't bite the hand that feeds? Because from an animal breeding standpoint, you bite the hand of the breeder, what happens? You're out of there, okay? And so most of the dog breeds that you enjoy today are a product of that. You take these dogs, you breed them together. The ones that make good pets, you keep and you breed and you feed. And the ones that are aggressive, what do? You cull them, right? Unless you're trying to produce a dog breed that is what? More inclined to being aggressive, more like a defender. And again, so we made the Chihuahua. You release the Chihuahua in nature, it's only going to be a matter of weeks before it's gone, or maybe a day or two. All of the veggies and fruits that we eat are artificially selected. In other words, we took plants that had variations in traits, and you ate a plant and you said, wow, that tasted really delicious. You keep those seeds, you plant those seeds. You come across a plant, it looks exactly the same, and you eat it, you're like, wow, that was disgusting. Do you keep those seeds? No, right? And so people have, using our knowledge of natural selection, have used artificial selection to produce modern day vegetables. All of these, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, these all belong to a group known as the brassicas, which all have evolved from wild mustards, right, over the last 10,000 years, okay? You're not gonna go into the woods, ladies and gentlemen, and find a wild tomato plant. You're not gonna go into the woods and be like, wow, look at this wild native cauliflower. You're not. You're going to find its ancestral lineage in the wild mustards. Who in here likes carrots? I think carrots are wonderful. Carrots grow wild all over the world. And I might point out, hey, there's a wild carrot. If you go yank it up out of the ground, is there going to be a giant, tender, delicious root for you to eat? No, right? Because the wild carrots don't have those genes, right, for those large, tender roots. And when we see changes, small scale changes in phenotype, we call that microevolution. So just changes in colors from one generation to the next. And then when we see massive changes over a longer period of time, we call that macroevolution. And I'm going to leave off right there. We'll get into like the more detailed mechanisms of natural selection and evolution tomorrow. What I would like for you guys to do is I would like for you to make sure that you finished that video looking at sickle cell anemia and malaria. If you've already done that, then you've got your vocab. And again, if you look at that EOC study plan, pages 12 and pages 1 would be great pages to look at today. If you have any questions about anything, please send me a reminder, an email. And ladies and gentlemen, if you've got missing assignments, the clock is ticking. I think I'm going to make the cutoff for the assignments. All missing assignments need to be turned in by Monday of next week, because next week we won't actually have a lot of new assignments. We'll simply be focusing on reviewing. So if you have missing assignments you still need to attend to, do so immediately. That is due not this Friday, but the next Friday. But our goal is to have it done by Wednesday. That way you would be hypothetically prepared for the practice EOC.